Good day, grade 7 students. This is teacher Teresita Rumbawa of Santo Rosario Integrated School. I am your teacher for this session. Today, you are going to join me in our topic for English 7, Quarter 4, Week 5. Our topic for today is about discovering conflicts in literary selections and resolving conflicts in non-violent ways from the alternative delivery mode written by Arcangel Bañez Jr. This module was designed to provide you with fun and meaningful opportunities for guided and independent learning at your own pace and time. You will be able to process the contents of the learning resources while being an active learner. At the end of this session, you are going to give the meaning of conflict and its role as an element of story. Number 2, discover conflict in literary selections. Number 3, explain the different types of conflicts. Number 4, identify non-violent ways to resolve conflicts. Number 5, apply the learnings you gained from the lesson to your real-life situation. And number 6, cite the importance of resolving conflict in non-violent ways. A good story requires conflict and resolution, which are two of its essential elements. To activate your prior knowledge about the topic, let us start our discussion by doing this activity. Before we begin, be sure that you have your pen, paper, and module with you. The direction is: choose the letter of the best answer. Write your answers on your paper. Let us start. Number 1. It is the struggle that gives energy and excitement to the story and requires a peaceful resolution. A. Character. B. Conflict. C. Problem. D. Solution. The answer is B. Conflict. Number 2, the type of conflict that involves the struggle between the character and his or her own thoughts, conscience, emotions, or beliefs. A. Man versus self. B. Man versus man. C. Man versus nature. And D. Man versus society. Answer is A. Man versus self. Number 3. The type of conflict that involves a struggle between the character and natural elements that are beyond his or her control, such as typhoons, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. A. Man versus self. B. Man versus man. C. Man versus nature. D. Man versus society. Answer is C. Man versus nature. Number 4. The type of conflict that involves a physical or mental battle between two or more characters in the story. A. Man versus self. B. Man versus man. C. Man versus nature. D. Man versus society. Answer is B. Man versus man. Number 5. The type of conflict that involves a struggle between the character and the culture, rules, or laws of the community in which he or she lives. A. Man versus self. B. Man versus man. C. Man versus nature. And D. Man versus society. Answer is D. Man versus society. Number 6. The type of conflict that involves a struggle between the character and the divine forces or mythical creatures that possess magical powers and non-human abilities. A. Man versus self. B. Man versus man. C. Man versus technology. D. Man versus supernatural. Answer is D, man versus supernatural. Number 7, the type of conflict that involves a struggle between the character and advanced man-made machines. A, man versus self. B, man versus man. C, man versus technology. And D, man versus supernatural. The answer is C, man versus technology. Number 8, a way to resolve conflicts in a non-violent way by paying close attention to what others are trying to say or explain. A, debating. B, ignoring. C, listening. D, speaking. Answer is C, listening. Number 9, a way to resolve conflicts in a non-violent way by engaging into a peaceful exchange of thoughts of productive communication with the person you have conflict with. A, constructive reaction. B, dialogue. C, empathy. D, forgiveness and reconciliation. Answer is B, dialogue. A way to resolve conflicts in non-violent way by letting go of one's anger and by restoring peaceful relationship with others you have conflict with. A, constructive reaction. B, dialogue. C, empathy. D, forgiveness and reconciliation. Answer is D, forgiveness and reconciliation. Great job, learners! In literature, conflict is the struggle or problem between characters in a story. Conflict arises when there are different opposing views and interests, or there are issues that need to be resolved or provided with a solution. These are some examples of conflicts, like A, father and a son having an argument. Next example of conflict is two friends competing for attention and affection of a beautiful girl. And another one is an upcoming college student trying to decide what course he or she will take up in college. Resolution to conflict can be done in a subtle way to avoid drastic solutions. Conflict makes a story more exciting as it provides energy to the events in the story. To continue, learners, listen to the short story and discover the conflict. The story goes like this. Once upon a time, in a place called Barbania, there lived a prosperous king named Fernando and his wife, Queen Valeriana. They had 3 children. The eldest was Don Pedro, followed by Don Diego, and the youngest Don Juan. One night, King Fernando had a nightmare that made him depressed and sick, and the only cure for the king was the song of the Ibong Adarna. The king commanded his 2 older brothers to capture the Ibong Adarna, but they both failed. Soon enough, Don Juan set off to capture the magical bird in Mount Tabor, where the bird lived. Don Juan succeeded because of the help of an old hermit who was pleased by his kindness and generosity. He was also able to rescue his 2 older brothers who were turned to stone by the magical bird as they tried to capture it. On their way home, the 2 older brothers attacked Don Juan and left him in the forest, half dead. When they reached the kingdom, they claimed credit in capturing the bird, but the Ibong Adarna refused to sing and the king remained sick. However, Don Juan recovered from his injuries and returned to the kingdom and made the Ibong Adarna sing for the king. After knowing the truth, King Fernando ordered Don Pedro and Don Diego be expelled from the kingdom. However, the soft-hearted Don Juan asked the king to forgive his brothers, and the king agreed to his wish. Did you discover conflicts in the story? You will find out if your answers in this activity are correct as you continue studying this module. All conflicts fall into two categories. External conflict arises when the characters in the story are struggling against other characters, nature, society, supernatural beings, and technology. Internal conflict, however, arises when the characters are struggling with their own thoughts, feelings, or conscience. There are 6 types of conflict. Let me discuss this to you one by one. Number 1, man versus man. A conflict that involves a physical or mental struggle between the characters in the story, such as in the case of a duel, crime, or war. Number 2, man versus nature. A conflict that involves the struggle between the characters and the forces of nature, such as typhoons, earthquake, or volcanic eruption. Number 3, man versus society. A conflict that involves the struggle between a character and the rules or culture of the society in which the character in the story lives. Examples of man versus society are breaking the laws, being discriminated, or standing up alone on what the character believes to be right. Number 4, man versus supernatural. A conflict that involves a struggle between a character and divine or mythical beings such as gods and goddesses, fairies and creatures that possesses magic. Examples of man versus supernatural are battles waged against monsters and human conflicts with witches, fairies, and divine beings. Number 5, man versus technology. A conflict that involves immense fight against man-made machines and software. Example of this type of conflict are man's clash with robots, artificial intelligence, smart gadgets, and computer viruses. Number 6, man versus self. A conflict that involves the struggle between the character and his or her own thoughts, feelings, or conscience, such as when making a decision or judgment, controlling one's anger, or stopping from loving someone. After learning the types of conflicts, let us go back to the story of Ibong Adarnat. What were the conflicts you identified in the previous activity? What do you think are the types of conflict they belong to? Number 1, conflict in the story. Don Pedro and Don Diego tried to capture the magical Ibong Adarna, but they failed and were turned to stones. This type of conflict is character versus supernatural, because the conflict or the struggle is between the 2 brothers and the magical bird. Number 2 conflict in the story is Don Juan was attacked by his evil brothers on their way after finding them in the mountain and rescuing them from the magical bird. This is an example of character versus character, because the conflict is between Don Juan and his 2 evil brothers. Resolving conflict in non-violent ways is the peaceful ways in solving conflicts both in literary selection and real life. Providing non-violent resolution to conflicts is important in rebuilding good relationships and in avoiding more serious problems that may arise in the future. Let us discuss some of the correct attitudes in resolving conflicts in peaceful ways. Number 1, listening, paying close attention and understanding what others are trying to say and explain. Number 2, dialogue, discussing the issue between the opposing parties in a positive and peaceful approach. Number 3, empathy, trying to understand the feelings of others by considering how you would act if you were in the same situation. Number 4, anger management, controlling one's aggressive emotions properly. Number 5, constructive reaction, reacting by doing the right thing instead of being aggressive against the people you have conflict with. Number 6, forgiveness and reconciliation, letting go of anger and restoring peaceful relationship with others you had conflict with. Your next activity is you are going to read the excerpt stories in your module and identify the conflict and the possible ways to resolve the conflict in non-violent ways. There you have it, learners. We are done with our episode today. Remember, learners, that conflict and resolution are essential components of literary selection and in real-life situation. So, it is important that we need to find out ways to resolve conflict in non-violent ways to avoid serious problem in the future. I hope that you learned something about our topic for today. Again, this is Teresita Rumbawa of Santo Rosario Integrated School.